Welcome everybody, I'm Dr. Sam Spinelli with Citizen Athletics, and today we're talking about a full body band workout. When it comes to training at home, most people have a band, and if they don't, bands are really easy to get, they're very versatile, and they can be a game changer for exercising at home. If you're looking for more workouts that you can do at home, check out the link in the description box below where we have options for mobility, strength, and other ones, and they're entirely free. For today, we're talking specifically about an all band-based workout. Before we get into the exercises, we gotta give a breakdown on the different kinds of bands you might utilize. There are essentially 4 different kinds of bands that you might utilize when training. Some of these bands work better for different exercises, so it's beneficial if you have multiple kinds of bands. Firstly, we have mini bands, which have also been recently getting called loop bands. These can come in both fabric and rubber types. Usually you'll find that the fabric are more durable and stronger, but they're more expensive, whereas the rubber are more cost effective, but they don't necessarily last as long. Secondly, we have tube bands, and these may come covered in a fabric. These are often going to come with a handle on one end or both ends. It's common to find them where they come with an anchor device that you can secure in a rack or a doorway. Thirdly, we have the traditional loop band, which also sometimes gets called a jump stretch band. And these are the more versatile options when it comes to bands. You can use it like a mini band, you can also use it like a tube band in many ways, and you can do a ton more options as well. The fourth and final kind is going to be the light therapy band. These are often called TheraBands because of the brand that is really popular for them. We're not going to get specifically into too much detail on these. Probably better off utilizing one of the other bands in place of this wherever possible. Now with that stuff out of the way, let's get into the exercises. We're going to show you our favorite exercises for each type of band. There are a ton more options out there. You can get very creative with this. These are the ones that are usually going to get the best return on investment. To start off with, let's go through the mini band. Usually a mini band is going to be either wrapped around your legs or our arms and not necessarily anchored onto something external. Some starting options for the lower body. Mini band squats. These can be done where we place the band around our knees and then start to perform the exercise going up and down. You can add some additional load if you want, such as a dumbbell plate or backpack if you have it. The next one is mini band lateral walks. These come in many forms and people put the band in different places, such as above the knee, below the knee, or on the toes. Putting it in each different place does challenge the muscles slightly to a different degree, so you can play around and see which one you like the most. Next one, prone leg curls. This is a very simple exercise. You just gotta lay down on your stomach, have the band around your feet or on your ankles, and then start performing some knee flexion. These are great for challenging one leg to maintain knee extension while the other one goes through flexion, so both legs get challenged. We can also stay in the same position and do prone leg extension. Here we just flip it around and we have the one leg maintaining a short length position isometric in the leg curl, and the other leg go through cycles of extension. If we stay on the ground, we can transition to side lying and perform some side lying hip abduction. This is a great exercise as it challenges you to maintain hip extension while going through hip abduction. You can scale how hard it is very easily by just moving the band higher or lower on your legs. When the band is above your knees, it's easiest. And then as you move it down below your knees, it gets harder. And finally down towards your ankles and toes is the hardest. From here, we can roll onto our back and start performing some glute bridges with the band around our knees. These are a great way to get the glutes really lit up. And for people who struggle in feeling their glutes during movements, these are a very effective way to help you learn how to use them. Our final option for using the loop band on the lower body is the supine march. This is where we're going to be laying on our back with the loop around our toes, working on utilizing our hip flexors as we maintain a flat back position on the ground, lifting our legs up and then beginning to march. While we're here, we're going to pull one foot in while the other leg fights to keep it extended out. If you do a good job of this, you're going to be really challenging your hip flexors and your abdominal muscles. These 7 are a solid starting point for training your lower body with the loop band. But let's get into the upper body. When it comes to the upper body, there are a ton of options. It's just about picking the ones that are going to be the most beneficial. Firstly, we got the band assisted push-up. For anyone who struggles with performing push-ups, this is a great way to get in more volume on push-ups. You simply place the band around your elbows and then go through push-ups. As you descend down, the band will get stretched and assist on the way up. Now, if you're looking for a different exercise for pushing, we can try the push-pull exercise. This is going to be done where we're in standing, holding the loop band in our hands. You're going to start with your arms bent around 90 degrees, and then you're going to have one arm pulled back while the other presses out. This exercise is pretty effective, but it is limited for a lot of people who are stronger. And so if you're someone who is stronger that's looking for a little bit more challenge in that upper body pull exercise, then we can shift over to the half kneeling row. What we're going to do here is we're going to set up in a half kneeling position. We're going to then hook the band underneath your front foot so that it's anchored, and then we're going to have a slightly forward bent position and start to pull back. The further you place your foot out, the more challenge that you will be able to have on the tension in the band. You can also adjust the angle of inclination of your torso to play around with how that exercise feels. So if it feels like it's not being very effective, you can try standing a little bit more upright, do a little bit more lat challenge. If you want to lean a little bit more forward, you can get a little bit more upper back challenge. Next up is the classic double external rotation, which some people call the no money. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna be in standing, we're gonna have our palms facing up, the band across our hands, then we're gonna rotate externally. This is a great way to challenge your rotator cuff muscles, specifically your external rotators. Our last one for the upper body is the lateral mini band crawl. If we place that band around your wrist and then set up in a bear crawl position, and from here we move laterally, challenging the shoulders to work on fighting for horizontal abduction while maintaining a good scapular position, we can light up those shoulders. This is very effective for challenging one side to maintain a stable position while the other side drives out laterally. These should give you a ton of options to work with for the upper body. While you can definitely push hard on a lot of these exercises, for a lot of people who are a little bit stronger, these mini loop band options are going to be limited. For those people who are stronger, going to the regular loop band is going to be a good option. Looking at the lower body, we can start to consider different options, for instance like the Zercher squat. What we do here is we perform a regular type squat as we would, but now we place the band so that it loops around our elbow creases and then it's secured underneath our feet. You can place a towel in the crease of your elbows so that the band isn't directly on if you find this uncomfortable. For people who are a little bit stronger and don't have a sufficiently challenging band, you can keep the band in line so that it doesn't loop around in one continuous unit, and instead it loops around, hooking onto each elbow separately and then underneath your feet. Much like the Zercher squat, the band can be a very simple way to load the squat. Here we take the band, instead of being on the crease of our elbows, we place it over our shoulders, and this increases the length or the tension that's on the band. Just like we did with the Zercher squat, if you find that this isn't challenging enough, you can also increase the demand on it by keeping the band in line and having it secure under each foot instead. Staying in this same position, we can transition into a good morning, where we now start to utilize more of a hip dominant motion to challenge the glutes, the hamstrings, and the back. You want to try and keep a soft bend in your knees and really emphasize pushing those hips back while having your shoulders come forward. If you're trying to emphasize your glutes and hamstrings in particular, the goal is to really push those hips as far back as you can. In contrast, if you're looking to challenge your back to a little bit more degree, you want to try and keep those hips a little bit more forward and have the shoulders come forward more. Continuing on, challenging the posterior chain, we can do the band deadlift. What we do here is we have the band underneath our feet and then holding onto it with our hands. It's relatively simple. We're just gonna have the band hooked under each feet, grab it with each hand, and then we're gonna go through that deadlift action or the hip hinge type action. If you find that the band doesn't have enough tension, you can double it up, try wrapping it around, and increase the tension that way. Another option is to step a little bit wider with the band and progress towards a sumo variation. As you start to step out wider, we're gonna start challenging the adductors to a higher degree. There are a few different ways that you can utilize the band for this exercise. You could try to keep maintaining that similar setup as we did with the conventional deadlift, but as you start to get wider, it does get a little bit awkward. What you can do instead is step on the band like we were before, but instead of grabbing the outsides, now you grab the inside. And again, if you're still not finding this sufficiently challenging, you can try wrapping it around a second time. Now, if you want to try doing a horizontally loaded hip hinge, we can try out the pull through. This is relatively easy to set up. All we need to do is anchor the band onto something like a doorway, a couch, or something else that's very sturdy. Generally, when we're performing the pull through, we want to have it as low as possible. So if you're utilizing a doorway, you want to try to have it as set lower than just at the door handle height. If you have a long enough band, you can secure it onto the door handle and then trace it underneath the door, and that's a viable option. If you have a stronger band, that might not work out well, and instead you might need to be able to secure it on the other side of the door with a different option, such as having a dowel or something else sturdy on the other side of the door. Once you're set up for this, as you start to step out further, you'll find that there's more challenge. So you're going to want to step out as far as you're able to maintain your foot position and not get pulled backwards. As you do this, ensure that you maintain a good hip hinge, that way you challenge your glutes and hamstrings. Now, if you want to try and do some single leg work, we have a few different options here as well. We can keep the band set up in the same position and go through a single leg deadlift option. Instead of having your back face the anchor, now we flip around so our chest is facing the anchor. We want to have the one leg that's moving drive the motion while the other leg stays stationary. Again, if you want to utilize more hips, you want to try and reach back more with that rear leg. And if you want to try to utilize your back more, then you want to have those shoulders come more forward. If you want to get into some single leg work with a little bit more quad emphasis, then we can try out the skater squat. We can do this both band assisted and band resisted. For the assisted option, we have the band attached at a higher point and then pull tight on it as we go down, and the band assists us in coming up. For the resisted option, we have the band anchored lower, and that way as we go down and come up, when we are driving back up, the band starts to give us resistance instead of assistance as in the prior option. Moving on from the lower body, we can get into the upper body. This is a really easy way to increase the challenge on push-ups, so if you're somebody who can already bust out a good set of push-ups, toss that band on and increase the challenge. Now, if you're someone who's not able to do a band resisted push-up, you can try doing a band assisted push-up. What you're gonna do here is you're gonna have the band anchored up high, and then in that way it's secured around your chest or your hips, and as you go down, the band pulls back up and helps you out. If you're looking to get a little bit more serratus focus work, we can stand up and then perform the serratus bear hug. You're gonna take the band, wrap it around your back, and then you're gonna have it secured on each hand, and then you're gonna reach out and have your hands cross midline and up slightly. As you do this, you wanna let your shoulders protract forward and emphasize that serratus working. If we wanna shift gears and start working on more of our back focus, we can take the band, toss it on the ground, step on top of it, and then grab it in a bent over position. This is gonna be set up similar to the bottom position of the deadlift, but here we're gonna maintain that bottom position while we perform a row. You can either do this with a double arm style, an alternating arm style, or a single arm style. If you find that the double arm style isn't very challenging, the single arm style we can load up really heavily. As well, if you find that the bent over row is just not sufficiently challenging, we can try the seated band row as well. What you're gonna do here is you're gonna sit down on the ground, secure the band around your feet, and then perform the row. This is a nice one to get a little bit of an extra lat stretch as you let your shoulders protract forward and then really retract back as you lean back. For those who wanna work their shoulders more, we can try the half kneeling one arm overhead press. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna sit up with one knee on the ground and one knee up, and we're gonna have the band secured under the down knee. You can hold it with one hand and press overhead. You can also stay in the same position and try the two arm press as another option. A similar pressing option that we can try is where we anchor the band behind us and then perform a press forward. You can do this in half kneeling. You can also do this in a split stance position or in a standing position. What's also nice about this exercise is that you can change the angle that you press at. So you can press forward, you can press upwards, and you can press downwards. We can also do a vertical pulling exercise very similar. By securing the band to a higher location, we can perform a pull down pulling towards us. By manipulating your body angle and how close you are to the attachment point, we can change how we challenge our muscles for both the back, the shoulders, and the biceps. Now, if you're looking to challenge your arms in a more isolation fashion, we can keep the band up high and shift over to a tricep press down. We can set up in a standing position with a small knee and hip bend, and then work on driving those hands down so they come down by your sides. If you take that band off from the top and secure it down low, we can also step back and perform a bicep curl. If you don't have a viable way to secure it underneath the door, you can also just stand on the band and perform bicep curls with it there. Finally, we can do some shoulder specific work by taking the band away and using it freely. The classic band pull apart is a fantastic option to challenge those upper back muscles. We can also do this in different directions to challenge the upper back muscles slightly differently. To do this, we can work on a diagonal pattern. If you want to play around with this, you can try different diagonal angles and see which works best for you. When it comes to working the trunk, there's a ton of different options that you can do as well. Some basic ones are going to be like pal-off presses, and you do this in split stance, half kneeling, and tall kneeling, as well as doing a wide array of different types of resisted crunches, resisted reverse crunches, and many more options. Now, if you have a tube band that has a handle on it, usually you're going to be able to utilize it in a similar fashion to the ones that we just showed. Except for in some exercises, for instance like the squat, where instead of placing it over your shoulders, you might have to secure it and hold it in your hands. Whereas in other exercises like the deadlift, it's going to be actually better because instead of trying to hold onto the band, you'll be able to just hold onto the handles. If you have an anchored tube band set that you can secure on a doorway, it can be an excellent option for a lot of different exercises though. I've got these ones from Team 4 Core that are fantastic and they secure on each side of the doorway, and I can use them for a lot of different exercises that I can't do with the loop band. For instance, during pull down exercises, I can cross my hands over and work on pulling horizontally a little bit more to challenge my upper back to a higher degree. Similarly, when performing cable pressing options, I can cross my midline and have a little bit more pec involvement. Other than that, they usually function essentially just like regular loop bands. When it comes to training with bands, you can get really creative, and there's a ton of different options that you could come up with. Now, one thing before we close out the video that we want to discuss is a principle of training. When it comes to training, regardless of the type of equipment, there's a few key things that we need to ensure that we do in order to make progression. Number one, sufficient effort. This is probably the key one that often gets missed the most in traditional band workouts. This isn't the fault of bands inherently, it's just usually when people are performing band exercises, they don't push themselves hard enough. In order to challenge our muscles, we need to work in a progressive overload fashion and reach higher thresholds of effort over time. Essentially, get closer to failure. When we do these workouts, we're looking to get to an RPE of roughly 7 to 8, or being approximately 2 to 3 reps short of failure. If you don't know what that is, then what you want to do is find a few exercises you feel comfortable pushing harder on and take them to failure. Most people underestimate how hard they can actually go and have no idea how close to failure they are. Most of the time, people perceive that moving faster is equaling harder, or breathing heavier equals harder, but that's not the accurate description. and we need to reach these higher levels of challenge and creating more mechanical tension in our muscles. So find a few exercises you feel more comfortable with and push the effort. 2, sufficient volume. I don't usually see this as a problem. Most of the time, these workout routines that are designed around bands have a ton of volume. Now, as I brought up the point of having more intensity, we do have to consider the balancing act of intensity and volume. As we go into higher levels of intensity, we have to reduce volume down so we don't overload too fast. So if you are going to try to progressively work into higher challenging effort, you want to use a little bit lower volume than you normally would. For most people, if we have a sufficient challenging effort, getting in 3 to 5 sets per muscle group in each workout is sufficient. The final one, consistency. You could have the wrong volume, you could have the wrong effort, but if you are consistent, you could still make good progress. In contrast, you could have the perfect volume and intensity in a single session, but if you don't repeat that session, you're not going to see progression. If doing these band workouts at home allows you to be more consistent, that's fantastic. Utilize them and push hard. Again, if you're looking for some other options to help encourage you to be more consistent and you just need more ideas, check the link in the description box below where we have a free workout guide that you can utilize with tons of different programs. Again, if you need some additional exercise ideas, some additional plans to try out to make yourself more consistent, check out the link in the description box below. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next one.